The room felt colder than any courtroom should, but I kept my hands still on the table. Across the aisle, my mother, Councilwoman Claudia Ellington, sat with the kind of posture that made photographers adore her. Her attorney, Leon Archer, leaned in and whispered something meant to sound reassuring. She nodded as if victory were a ceremony already scheduled. Judge Marion Keene adjusted her glasses. She did not look at me, though she had looked at my mother the moment she entered. A brief flicker of recognition neither of them bothered to hide. Leon rose first. Your Honor, we contend that my client has every legal and moral reason to question whether this young woman can manage an estate valued at over $4 million. Her history speaks for itself. My father, Thomas Ellington, sat behind them. He lowered his eyes the way he always did when he did not want to choose sides, which meant he had already chosen hers. I breathed once. Steady. My history speaks for itself, I said quietly, rising. But so do hers. Claudia's jaw shifted. Mara, she murmured, voice smooth as polished stone. This is unnecessary. Sit down before you embarrass yourself further. The judge tapped her pen. Ms. Ellington, do you have a formal response? Yes, I said. I'm filing for judicial disclosures. For a heartbeat. The room froze. Judge Keene's fingers tightened around her pen. Claudia's expression stilled nothing visible, but I felt the air shift. Leon forced a laugh. A tactical stunt, Your Honor. No, I answered. A requirement. My voice did not rise, but something inside me did a quiet certainty that I had finally stepped onto the right battlefield. If you're listening now, stay with me. What happens next is the reason I stood up in that cold room at all. I grew up in a house where silence won every argument. My mother perfected it first. Claudia Ellington never yelled. She carved you down with a look, a breath, a pause that told you she had already decided who you were. My father, Thomas, followed her lead without meaning to. He avoided conflict the way some people avoid fire, stepping back before he could feel the heat. I learned early that staying small kept the peace. Only my grandmother, Evelyn Ward, refused that rule. She would pull out a chair at her kitchen table and say, Speak, Mara. Your voice matters more than you think. She ran the Ward Scholars Foundation with a steadiness that never needed applause. When I told her my mother said generosity made people weak, she laughed softly. It makes people accountable. She corrected, Power will say otherwise. At family dinners, Claudia would praise my brother's leadership programs or my father's committee work, then turn to me with a polite smile. Mara is figuring things out. It sounded gentle to anyone listening. To me, it was dismissal with a silver edge. Evelyn always cut in. She has more direction than any of us admit. My mother would reply lightly, Mother, please, as if Evelyn were indulging a harmless fantasy. Years later, in the courtroom, that same tone echoed in Claudia's voice, controlled, certain, determined to shrink me. I held on to Evelyn's last words to me before her memory began slipping. Kindness must survive ambition. Promise me that. I promised, and in the cold courtroom, for the first time, I intended to keep it. Evelyn's decline began with small slips repeating a story twice, misplacing the same envelope 3 times in one afternoon. When I told my mother, she waved it off. She likes attention. Mara, do not encourage the dramatics. But Evelyn never sought attention. When she forgot my name one evening and apologized as if she had done something unforgivable, I packed a bag and moved into her cottage the next morning. She touched my hand. You should not give up your life for mine. You never asked me to. I said, that makes all the difference. The next 2 years were measured by medications, gentle reminders, and soft humming when she could not recall words. On the days she grew restless, she asked for my mother. Claudia came only when campaign photographers could join her. She stood at the doorway and said, "Smile. Mother, people want to see you strong." Evelyn's eyes dimmed each time. One night, while sorting her papers, I found a sealed envelope labeled with my name. I hesitated. Evelyn noticed. "Open it," she whispered. Inside was a handwritten letter and a notarized codicil. She had left me control of her entire estate, valued at over $4 million, and full authority over the Ward Scholars Foundation. I looked up, stunned. "Why me?" "Because you listen," she murmured. "Because you do not confuse kindness with weakness." I tried to speak, but she squeezed my hand before the words came. "Protect what matters," she said. She passed away in early spring. At the funeral, my mother delivered a flawless eulogy to donors and cameras. I stayed in the back, holding the envelope that would start a war none of them were prepared for. For a few weeks after the funeral, the world felt muted. I met with Evelyn's attorney, reviewed the codicil, and tried to steady myself inside the role she had trusted me to fill. The Ward Scholars Board welcomed me cautiously polite smiles, measured questions, but no one pushed back. Not yet. Then a board member slipped, a comment too casual, a glance too nervous. Someone had told my mother. That evening, as I sorted through Evelyn's files, a sharp knock broke the quiet. I opened the door, expecting a neighbor. Claudia Ellington walked in without waiting. Her eyes moved over the stacks of documents on my table. "So it is true," she said softly. "Mother left everything to you." I closed the door behind her. "She did, and she had her reasons. She was unwell." Claudia snapped. "You should have encouraged her to rest, not influence her." "I influenced nothing. She chose." Claudia stepped closer. "Mara, an estate of over $4 million is not something you can manage. The foundation needs structure, not sentiment." "I have structure," I replied. "And sentiment does not disqualify me." She laughed under her breath. "You always think defiance is depth. It is not. It is immaturity." My hands tightened at my sides. "Your approval isn't a requirement." "It will be," she said. "The community trusts me. The donors trust me. The board knows my experience. You are 28, with no record of public leadership. Evelyn trusted me." I answered. Something sharp flickered across her face. "You think that matters in the long run." "It mattered to her," I said. Claudia's voice cooled. "Return control of the foundation, and I will ensure the press remains compassionate." "No," I said. She studied me as if assessing a threat. "Then you leave me no choice. I will correct this." She walked out, heels striking the floor like a verdict. I exhaled only when the door shut. The war Evelyn had warned me about had arrived, and my mother had just fired the first shot. The first article appeared 3 days after my mother's visit. A headline from the Tacoma Sentinel blinked on my phone. "Concerns rise over young heir's ability to manage Ward Scholars." I read the piece twice. Every word was careful, vague, and lethal phrases like sources familiar with the family and questions of experience. It never named Claudia, but her cadence was all over it. That afternoon, the Ward Scholars Board called an emergency meeting. They did not say my mother's name either. They did not need to. One member cleared his throat. "Mara, the timing of your appointment has created turbulence." Another added, "Donors are nervous. They want reassurance." I folded my hands. You all knew Evelyn trusted me. A third member avoided my eyes. "Trust is not the issue. Optics are." I did not flinch. "Optics can be corrected. Integrity cannot." Silence. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Predictable. They adjourned without a vote, but the damage was done. On my way out, a young staffer, Daniel, caught my arm. "I am sorry," he whispered. "People are scared of crossing your mother. She has been calling donors personally." I nodded. "I know. That same evening, my phone rang. Thomas. His voice came thin, apologetic. Mara, maybe you should give her what she wants, just to calm everything down, so she can rewrite everything Evelyn built, I asked. He hesitated. Your mother knows how to handle public pressure. You do not. There it was, his loyalty, delivered in the softest betrayal. I am not surrendering, I said. Mara, I have made my choice. The line fell quiet before he hung up. An hour later, I sat across from Julia Sterling, a litigation attorney with calm eyes and a sharper mind. She listened without interrupting, then leaned back. As of today, she said, you stop reacting. We build, we document, we pull every thread they hope you never find. For the first time all week, I felt something steady beneath me. Good. I said, let's begin. Julia Sterling wasted no time. The morning after our first meeting, she arrived with a notebook, a recorder, and the kind of composure that made even silence feel strategic. We begin with a timeline. She said, every call, every message, every donation record, every board decision. If your mother moved against you, she left footprints. I pulled out Evelyn's folders. There is a lot. Good, Julia replied. They will underestimate volume. We won't. For the next weeks, my apartment turned into a living archive. Julia dictated tasks with the precision of a surgeon request campaign finance logs, pull public records, track political events from the last decade. I worked through piles of documents until my hands ached. One afternoon, I found a sequence of small donations in Claudia's early campaigns. These numbers look strange. Julia leaned over. Each one is just under the threshold that triggers mandatory reporting. And all from the same neighborhood. Judge Marion Keene lives there. My stomach tightened. So they have been connected longer than anyone admits. Longer than anyone wants documented. She said. We kept digging. More overlaps appeared pictures from a fundraiser in 2010 where Judge Keene stood beside Claudia, smiling like a partner rather than a neutral public servant. A nonprofit board list showing Keene and two of Claudia's donors sharing positions. Event programs from Ward Scholars Galas where Claudia introduced Keene as a trusted community voice. I exhaled. This is not coincidence. No, Julia said. This is structure. Late one night, after hours of cross-checking files, I heard a soft knock. Daniel, the young staffer from the foundation, stood at my door holding a worn binder. I should not have this, he whispered. But it is from your mother's first campaign. It might help you. Inside were photos, letters, schedules proof of Judge Keene's involvement long before she ever sat on Claudia's cases. Julia flipped through the pages slowly. This connects everything, she murmured. Not influence. Infrastructure. I felt something shift inside me. Not relief certainty. They had spent over a decade tightening a net around this city. Julia handed me the binder. From here on, she said, we stop defending. We prepare to expose. The escalation came fast, the way controlled fires do when someone keeps feeding them. Leon Archer filed a motion to have me removed from all leadership roles at Ward Scholars for the protection of vulnerable students. The wording was cold and deliberate. The next morning, a set of photos surfaced online private moments from Evelyn's final months. Someone had taken them from my phone during a board meeting weeks earlier. Commenters twisted every image into an accusation. Julia studied the screen. They are trying to make you look negligent. It was never negligence, I whispered. It was love. They do not care about truth, she said. They care about narrative. By midday, another article appeared, quoting anonymous sources questioning my emotional stability. The board scheduled a vote for permanent removal after the hearing. That evening, I sat on the floor amid piles of evidence, the room tilting around me. Maybe I should stop, I said. Maybe this is not worth destroying everything else. Julia knelt beside me. This is what they want. Your surrender is their clean victory. I pressed my palms together, fighting the tremor in my chest. I am tired. I know, she said, but you are not done. Something in her voice steadied me. Not comfort, but truth. I lifted my head. No, I said, I am not. The courtroom felt smaller the second time, as if the walls already knew what would break. Leon Archer opened with the same confidence he carried everywhere, shoulders high. Voice smooth. Your Honor, my client seeks only to protect her mother's legacy. Ms. Mara Ellington is overwhelmed, inexperienced, and acting out of emotional confusion. My mother, Claudia, dabbed at her eyes with surgical precision. I love my daughter, she said, voice trembling on cue. But love cannot replace responsibility. Judge Marion Keene nodded as if she had heard these lines rehearsed before. Julia rose beside me. We appreciate their concern. Now let us discuss facts. She handed the first exhibit to the clerk, a series of campaign donations, each one just under mandatory reporting limits. These came from Judge Keene's neighborhood, Julia said, repeatedly. Over several years. Leon stood. Coincidence. Julia moved to the next exhibit photos from the 2010 fundraiser, Judge Keene beside Claudia, both smiling at a podium dressed in campaign banners. Claudia inhaled sharply. Judge Keene's hand twitched. Julia's tone never changed. This image is from the first event where Judge Keene publicly supported Councilwoman Ellington's campaign. Leon sputtered. Irrelevant. Pattern, Julia corrected. She placed the final item on the table, the binder Daniel had given us. A signed letter from Claudia to Marion, thanking her for early political support. The room stilled. Judge Keene went utterly silent. Julia turned to the bench. Your Honor, we move for immediate recusal. For the first time. Judge Keene met my eyes. Something unguarded flickered there, recognition, or fear, or the collapse of a story she had held together for too long. The courtroom held its breath. The ruling came from a substitute judge, clear, firm, undeniable. The codicil stood. Every claim from my mother collapsed. Julia touched my shoulder once, steady and silent. Judge Marion Keene resigned within days. An ethics investigation opened before the ink on her letter dried. Claudia's donors vanished. Her campaign office went dark overnight. When I signed the final estate papers, the clerk said softly, Your grandmother chose well. Later, standing outside the courthouse, I breathed in the cold Tacoma air and felt something uncoil inside me. If you have followed this far, stay with me. There is more to uncover than they ever planned to hide.